this documentary first come about? Can you tell us what you felt when you heard the news that you were given the director's role for this project?
But it came when I went to go see them at SoFi Stadium. When I went to the show, I was like, "Oh my God, this is like the Odyssey. Like we we need to make this film." And I wanted to film them while they were in military service, but understandably, it's a very sensitive time, and to give the members their time away without having a camera with them was important. And Hype's like, we see your passion and understand your framework, but maybe the military service is not the right time. And to their credit, 4 years later they contacted me. They were like, "Well, remember when we first talked, you had this idea about the Odyssey, and well, now they're coming back. We'd love for you to direct their comeback or their return, right? And to make this film, to be able to tell this story has been the greatest privilege of my career so far, and yeah, I feel very honored."
On a very personal note, I love that you started your documentary with Jin coming back from his solo tour. Did you consciously plan that first scene like that?
For me, the film is the return of BTS, and you can't have BTS, six members is not BTS, right? So it was very important for me for that to be the start of the film. It wasn't necessarily the start of our filming, right? We knew that the song camp and the album process was going to happen. Part of it was going to happen before Jin arrived. And so we did film a bit before Jin arrived, but that was actually mostly through these um, camcorders, these small camcorders that I gave each member because I wanted them to be able to tell their own story and tell their own perspective. And it's interesting now, I think, like Jungkook has either kept one of the cameras or a lot of his stuff recently has been shot on like sort of this VHS camcorder style. So I hope that was inspiring for him. Yeah, for me, it's like it wouldn't be a true return story unless everyone had returned. Because I think, again, there's logistical reason for them to start earlier in terms of schedule and things like that. But for me, the story of their return doesn't start until they're all, OT7.
And thank you for capturing the personal romance when the members came back to Seoul from the LA. So my question is that how did you decide where to film?
I heard this statement from Ocean Vuong, who's a Vietnamese American poet. He said, as artists, he's a writer, he's a poet. Like you're trying to make work not about people, but with people. And so that's how I enter my films. And so I ask the members, they don't have that much free time, right? And so when they do have free time, there's certain activities that they do. And so I ask them, we each have like a day to film with each individual members. What would you like us to film with you? And, after different conversations, just based on like logistics and safety and privacy and what I think would sort of relate thematically to the film, um, each member came with their own ideas. Uh, V wanted to, meet with his friends. And so that's what that became the scene, and him talking to his friends about the album and about his time in LA, I think was very reflective of what the film is about. Even though his friends are very famous, they're still his friends, and he's still talking to them like, how normal friends would. And so that's what he proposed, is having dinner with them. Jimin just wanted to stay at home and play video games. And and I thought that was really grounding and touching. Um, Suga just wanted to have a run around Seoul. We all know, Suga, he had like snuck and ran in the Bay Area before the Stanford show. RM wanted to go visit a museum. Jungkook wanted to be with Bam. Jin wanted to play tennis. J-Hope wanted to do ceramics, right? And so each member individually had agency about what they wanted to show, and honestly, what they didn't want to show too, because I think I wanted to respect their time and their privacy, and so we were able, I think, to have a great sort of diversity of scenes and of their different lives and perspectives on the process of making the album.
I know that you were born and raised in the United States, but your Vietnamese identity is very important to you. And as a Vietnamese American filmmaker making a documentary about a Korean band, did you ever see yourself as a cultural translator? And how did your Asian identity shape your perspective?
Yeah, maybe I guess the term translator is complicated in some ways. I didn't want to ever simplify Korea or
Mm,
BTS for Western audiences.
mm,
I do think, yeah, my experience growing up as an Asian American, as
mm,
Asian, um, I understood like the idea of representation and
mm.
the importance of like authentic and honest
Yes.
representation without necessarily having to over explain or pander for a certain audience. As a filmmaker, I am trying to be an observer and not to necessarily define things. And by observation, I think I allow the viewer to project their own ideas, their own experiences into the films and the stories and the participants without my hand as a director being ever too heavy-handed. And so, that being said, I do draw from my own personal experience growing up as an Asian Vietnamese in America, because I think a lot of times I felt like I had to translate my own culture to the world. And I've seen that be limiting to myself and many people of the diaspora, especially the Asian American community. And so I didn't want to have to do that for BTS necessarily. I
Mm,
think just by showing them as who they are, their act of returning to something that they've been away from, the transformation,
mm,
those are all very universal themes and ideas that didn't need translation in a way. And so, yeah, I think, and it's something that by making the film itself, uh, there's a sense of discovery for me. You go in being as prepared and researched as possible for a subject, but you always want to have that sense of discovery when you're in it, when you're actually making the film. So, there's certain scenes where, um, you know, I think specifically referring to the film BTS: The Return, there's a scene that's one of the last evenings in Los Angeles, and they're all sitting on the balcony. Jin has just left, and they're talking about the concept of arirang and how that will be exhibited in the album and their comeback in a way. And I think it was RM, I believe, or Jungkook who says, when whatever version of Arirang we make, it becomes our version. It becomes BTS's version of Arirang. And that like really touched me, because I think for many people who are in sort of hyphenated communities, they feel they have to be one thing or the other, right? And especially as an Asian American, I thought I had to do things that were very American, and that's how they would be American. Or I would have to lean on my Asian side, and that was like me representing my parents' culture. But through the act of migration and just existing, um, everything I do becomes American because I'm American in a way. And so I related to that idea of like through BTS's creation of their version of Arirang, it becomes their version, right? It's not them trying to be a more traditional version or something that's pandering to the West. By the action itself, that's how it becomes into existence, and it changes the meaning in a way. I'm not an expert in Arirang and the history, but I
mm,
thought that was a very beautiful idea that they can transform something that could be seen as very traditional and make it, their own. And by doing so, it's so it's almost postmodern in that way. So yeah, there's all these moments that I saw them navigating
Mm.
between being Korean and having to sort of also be global icons. And I think that's something, again, that many communities and individuals who might live on cross between two cultures, navigating different identities, they can relate to in many ways.
BTS is often portrayed through Orientalist or exoticizing lenses in Western media. I know that you are aware of that. And were there any conscious choices you made to avoid those frameworks?
And in my previous experience, again, growing up as Asian American, where I thought my identity might have been defined for me in many ways, and I think for me, it's the idea of me as a filmmaker, as an observer, and not as the definer. And I think the film exists in sort of the middle of BTS's journey. I mean, we don't know when the end is. We know, we have the beginning, and it's very rare. Usually in these type of films, either the filmmaker is observing and documenting at the beginning of a career, or towards the end when there's time for reflection. And so the idea of coming into the middle of BTS's story was quite unique and unusual. But I think that also gave me the liberty not to necessarily have to explain everything that happened before, Arirang and them leaving the military. And that's what I enjoyed about this process too, is like being able to be thrown into the middle and trying to capture this specific moment. And I think because we had that license, we gave enough context, I think, of the members and the group as who they are and how they exist within the group and where they are in the stage of their careers, but we didn't have to give a whole definition of who BTS was, right? And as a filmmaker, I think that's important. I think a lot of times people like to call a film or something definitive. I think we have to be open to the idea that there's so many different perspectives on a story. There's so many different experiences into a story. This is, my version. I've been very privileged to make a film about BTS, and I don't take that privilege lightly because it's such an honor. But this is my perspective on BTS's return from after the military service and all that. And so I was conscious about, the idea of orientalizing because I think anything that comes out of Asia, it's otherized in so many ways, right? Especially through the Western media. So by just making a film that was mostly observational without like sort of outside experts or cultural critics explaining like what BTS was, I was able to make something I felt that was much more intimate, um, and close in proximity to their story rather than seeing it through an outside perspective. And I was always careful that even going through Los Angeles, we didn't have like the typical shots where you would see other parts of Los Angeles and other parts of like LA life that didn't exist within the perspective of the group. The group, they would go uh, and record, then they would go home, they would have small interactions, but they weren't going to, they weren't tourists through LA. They were very much there to work. So I wanted to make sure that the film was so much in the perspective of the group as possible. So I think because I had that um, intention with the film, then I can kind of, um, not have to worry about the outside definitions of what BTS was. If that all makes sense.
You mentioned that you followed this documentary along Odyssey, and also Alems mentions Chronos and Kairos in his talk. And I feel like two people were reaching for the same truth. And do you think the members also embraced your creative vision, or did they help reshape it?
Before the film even started, um, that was how I thought of their journey once they left for the military, right? When they went away from being BTS and became sort of citizens that had to do their mandatory military service. When they were doing their SoFi Stadium tour back in 2021, right before they went to the military, and that was my first time being able to see them live. I was supposed to go see them at the Rose Bowl, but then the pandemic happened, and unfortunately, I couldn't see them. But being able to see them right before they went on their hiatus and seeing their relationship and rapport with Army and their fans who, it was deeply emotional. And for me as a filmmaker, I'm always thinking about how today in our present day we live these mythologies and these modes of storytelling that have existed for millennia. And the Odyssey is just one, uh, having grown up in the West in America, Greek mythology is often sort of put on this pedestal. So the Odyssey is one of those myths that I know very well. And it just immediately clicked to me that this felt like the Odyssey, that BTS was like Odysseus about to go off into the military, into war, and that Army in a way was like Penelope yearning for their return in many ways. And that was just a framework that helped me understand like the mythology and story and just thematics. It wasn't like a direct relationship to the film. I think it would have been too on the nose if I used the Odyssey as sort of a storytelling device. But it was the day, one of the first few days I spent with RM, and we did these interviews in the car, which actually were by total chance. Originally, we were just filming with the members in the car, and I just wanted them to have these quiet moments to themselves. I mean, with the recording process and them in the house with all the other members, it was like a lot of noise and a lot of time with other people. But these car rides that they took um, were moments of meditation and reflection for them. And there's this great Japanese movie, Drive My Car, which I love. And the director, Hamaguchi, once said that, he loves the idea of a car ride because you have a clear beginning, middle, end. If you get in the car, usually how long the distance is to the destination, and then you get to the destination. So there's a clear beginning, middle, end. And I always loved that idea. So I loved seeing, especially Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a very much a car culture. And I thought, okay, this is a way to show Los Angeles, show the members interacting with Los Angeles in this reflective way, and then having a clear beginning, middle, end to a scene. And, Jin was the first person we kind of followed in the car, and he just started talking. I didn't prompt him to talk. I didn't ask any questions, but maybe sometimes silence is awkward for certain people, and so he just wanted to start talking. He was talking about how how the tour was really hard, his solo tour, how it was great to be back with the fellow members. And my intention was, I never wanted to do sit down talking head interviews. I wanted to be as much in the present of the members as possible. I wanted to differentiate the film too from previous BTS documentaries that, they're very reflective and they talk, the members are looking back at things, but I wanted this film to feel as immersive in the present as much as possible. So I didn't want to do like interviews at the end where they talk about, oh, how it was like to record the album. I wanted to like hear about it while they were making it. So after Jin gave me the great suggestion because he did it. I started asking all the members questions while they were driving, while they were being driven to the studio. And so RM, out of nowhere, RM's such a wise person, as you all know. He started talking about Kairos and Chronos, and like those are concepts of time that I actually really um I try to live by. During COVID, I thought about Kairos and Chronos a lot. And so for RM to mention it, it just gave the film this gravitas, but also I got an it, I think with mythology and philosophy, they can kind of, this is what I love about the academic world too. It's like this definition, this concept that's hard to describe, but it's described in one word. Like there's no word for Chronos and Kairos in English. You have to explain it in a long sentence. But I think looking back at history, like there's language is so, important that you can encompass like a whole concept through one word. And that helped me understand how the members were thinking and how they were thinking while they were in the military. So it's just this very efficient and effective way for me to think about and understand what they're thinking. And so when RM said that, it helped me define the language of the film better. After that, I started talking to the members more about the Odyssey and how I felt like there was parallels, and then we, that deepened our connection and conversation with each other. And I think it deepened the film in many ways.
You observed BTS members very closely, and what was your first impression of each member? And what do you think is the biggest gap between public perceptions of BTS and who they really are in person?
I think seeing them as a monolith, as
Mhm.
one whole group rather than seven individual members and human beings, I think that's often a misconception that they're all the same. And I think I've heard a lot of jokes was like that, oh, I can't tell them apart. But I hope through, listening to their music, by watching the film, you see this distinction between each member. And that was a goal of mine as well for the general public who knew very little about BTS. By watching the film, they can see, each member has a distinct personality and has very distinct opinions, and different pressures that they come in making this album and coming back as BTS. So I think that was the I see as one of the biggest misconceptions, and I think there's a, a certain creative freedom that BTS has earned through their hard work and through their talent, and their commitment to their fans and to their artistry. I think it's easy to kind of, you know, stereotype and group them all together as being manufactured. But I think it's that tension that happens between being manufactured and finding your own individual voice as an artist. And I think the film shows that too. I think, all great artists, they're going to debate, they're going to have outside pressures that make them better artists, that make better art. Personally, as a filmmaker, as an artist, like I like having those debates with my collaborators, because it makes me think of questions that I've never thought of before. You need sort of that conversation and that challenge in order to like push yourself to a limit where you're creating the best art as possible.
The body-to-body listening scene later in the second part of the film and the appearance of Bang Si-hyuk is very memorable. Did you know at the time that it would be so important?
I mentioned earlier, as a
Mm.
filmmaker, you come in as prepared as possible. You do your research, but there are moments of like pure discovery and surprise. And I think, when we were shooting it was a great scene. But only in the context of the whole film do you understand how important it was. And so when I watch it now, it's one of my favorite scenes in the film. Seeing like Jimin and J-Hope, who are like really into the song and really into the sample, and then you have this look on V's face where he's like skeptical, and Jungkook is skeptical, and Suga is skeptical, and then RM has to come in, and as someone who's the quote unquote leader of the group, they want to hear him listen to the beat, and to see J-Hope just dancing, and then RM and Suga having this look to each other. That's something that you know you can't prepare for. And so I love watching that scene because it just reminds you that, again, the debate, the internal debate that they have between each other as members is so important for them to make something that feels authentic to them. I love how they each speak up too, right? They each have their own opinion. And even though they look to RM, they still speak their mind. And I think the song itself, Body to Body, is a culmination of all these long discussions that are important. It's not just like you go out, you have an idea and you make the song. There's so many iterations to the song making process. And if I had all the hours in the world, I think we would have done that for every single song. But because film is a liminal space, durational art form, only, making something over 2 hours is pretty difficult in today's world. And so we were very focused on what does the return of BTS mean? It's not just the making of Arirang. Thematically, what are we saying about BTS's return? What are the songs that um, show again these themes of transformation, these themes of identity that pertain to the album? So I think for us, we had a big team of collaborators, but Swim and Body to Body were the kind of obvious choices in terms of like how they reflected the themes of the album and of their return.
What audience reactions have meant the most to you? Have you received any memorable feedback from people who are not already ARMY?
I always want people to take away their own opinions and feelings and perspectives of the film. I have my own perspective and ideas, but when they do align, when I feel like I've created some synergy with my purpose and someone else's viewing, then that's always a great feeling. So the idea of like brotherhood, of friendship, of returning to oneself, when people who weren't BTS fans told me that that's what they felt watching the film and they understood this brotherhood, this deep brotherhood between the individuals, that was something that was very meaningful for me. How much work that the group goes under and the weight that they have to carry as not just these global icons, but really ambassadors of an entire country. That's so different from other artists, musical artists. There's other artists that are, big, similar fan size as BTS, but they don't have to represent their entire country in many ways. And I think BTS recognized that it could be, that responsibility, and they're very privileged to carry that responsibility together as a group. And from Army, they've just been. I feel like I've gotten a warm hug and welcome from Army for the most part, and uh, I hope they always understand my intention with making the film and trying well, you asked about cultural translator earlier. Maybe not so much a cultural translator, but sort of a messenger from the band who have expressed so much gratitude to Army, and you could see like how much um, they thought about the responsibility and wanting to make sure that what they made also satisfied the expectations of the fans. Like I hope that was visible through the film and through the scenes of the film because it's something that I observed very quickly on making the film. And I went to the comeback special in Korea, before the tour started, and that was really beautiful and got to see how meaningful it was for them to return and how the fans reacted. And then I got to actually see them a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas, and that was, to hear all the songs that I've seen kind of from start to finish and seeing the fans like sing along, that was like really special to me. Hearing them sing the lyrics and seeing the group react to it was it's yeah, you can't even describe that feeling.
Another documentary filmmaker is coming to our conference, Grace Lee, who made Forever We Are Young. Have you seen that film?
Yeah, Grace is like a friend of mine, and I count her as like one of my mentors early on in my documentary career. And so yeah, I saw Forever We Are Young. It was such a touching sort of tribute to Army, and it taught me a lot about the community that has formed through BTS. I think some people might easily dismiss like fans through just pure fandom, but I what I love about culture in general, not just music, is that how you can relate to. It makes you not feel alone, right? Um, and through Army and Army's interaction and the diversity of Army, you can see the community that has been created. That I don't think BTS could have even imagined would have been a result of the music that they make. So I really love seeing that film, and it was a good insight into Army.
BTS is a Korean band, yet I've met so many Asian Americans who say BTS completely changed how they view their own identity as Asians. As an Asian American yourself, did you experience a similar impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of culture, and especially with like BTS, is that no matter who you are, be it Asian American, you know, Black American, Korean American, where they've created this canvas that allows us to project our experiences um, onto what they've created. You know, in the Las Vegas show and every show that I've seen them at, there's such a diversity of Army, right? And frankly, I was surprised. I thought the first time I'd go there, it'd be mostly Asian American. But it was probably like 40-60% different, and that was really beautiful to me. And so I think that's what I love about art and culture, is like that way that we can define it ourselves and receive it and see it how it lands personally, without people telling us what it should and shouldn't be. And so, in a way, it's kind of ironic, because I think when I was growing up, um, people would just lump me in as Asian American because they didn't know if I was Korean or if I was Vietnamese or if I was Chinese. And there was an ignorance to that before. And now we have sort of like galvanized as a community, as Asian American community, because I think one of the beautiful things about like going to the BTS concert at SoFi Stadium is that, in America at that time during pandemic, we were going through like Stop Asian Hate at that time, that movement. And BTS spoke up, they went to the White House and talked about that. As they're not even American, but they understood like what, people see, and they use their voice to speak up against that. And so I think like we have to recognize that obviously there's distinctions and differences in our own experiences from being Korean American, Asian American, or even Vietnamese versus Vietnamese American. But that recognizing that it's important to not trying to um, sort of center our own narratives, but it is a way that we can be in solidarity as a community, right? And I think that distinction is very important, to use it for positivity, to move forward, to understand each other more clearly, understand each other's differences, but then also understand the things that bring us together, right? So I see BTS as a representation of that, to understand again, you know, there's seven individual members, right? But as together as BTS, there's a beauty and a strength and a community that forms from that. But that doesn't mean that they're not also seven individuals.
What was your reaction when you first heard that there are academic conferences dedicated to studying BTS?
I wasn't surprised. Of course, there are. I think BTS, you know, their existence, not just their music, like
Mm.
crosses like themes and subjects like globalization, uh, masculinity, fandom, performance,
Mm.
community, diaspora. So many different, I think, areas of academics that intersect. It's
Yes.
not just about the music. I I love being able to study something very
Mm.
deeply. So I have a deep respect for academics and the ability to kind of look beyond the surface of
Mm.
something. And
Yes.
there's so much depth. Obviously, being able to spend time with BTS, I've learned so much in depth by making the film. But I think also, hopefully, when now that the film is out to the world, deeper exploration and dissection of the film is
Mm.
what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, lastly, do you call yourself an army now?
I believe I've earned it. I hope so. I mean, my love and appreciation for BTS is very strong. So yes, I hope so. But in terms of how much I love and respect BTS, it's yeah, I believe I'm Army. Thank you so much. It means a lot, and thank you to all the scholars and everyone watching this. I appreciate everyone's love and support of the film.